everybody, Matt Maran here for another car review. This is of course the 2019 Buick Regal GS. Huge thanks to Buick for providing me with this very bright red Regal GS to review for you guys today. So about the Regal GS, well, for last model year 2018, they revealed this all new generation of the Regal GS. So I reviewed the previous generation GS and actually found that it was a really fun vehicle and a really good value. And I think they're continuing on with that same theme here with the new Regal. I think the looks are spectacular. I think it's definitely an improvement over the previous generation, especially up front there. Now, you know, in Europe, this is called the Opel Insignia, and this is basically just a rebadged and tweaked version of that car. And the European styling really shows here. It is just beautiful looking. I love the double eyebrows you have there on the headlamps. I love the chrome wings on the grille. I love the silver accents you have there in the lower part of the front bumper. I mean, everything about that front end just looks like $1 million to me. I love the way that looks. Coming down to the sides here, you see 19-inch wheels, which are actually 1 inch smaller than the 20s you used to get on the previous gen Regal GS. I actually think these 19s look better to me and allows you to have a little better ride quality and a little bit more tire there, and those look really great. I love the lines, the way they flow down the side of the vehicle as well. It's really cool. And then you have the very unique sportback body style here. So this is actually a hatchback there, and you can see that as we open up the hatch and go towards the rear there, but you can't really tell from the outside. It looks like a pretty normal sedan, and that gives you great extra versatility that you otherwise wouldn't have with a sedan, and you know, still gives you sleeker looks than you get with most hatchbacks as well. And you also have some very attractive taillights there and a few other little accents to make it look sportier. And so from every angle, I think this new GS is just a really good looking Regal. All the Regals look great, but especially the GS looks awesome. Right, for the interior of the Regal GS, well, it is a very cool place to be. So first thing, sitting down in these seats, as you can see, these are very cool seats. They're just so sporty, very deep bucket seats, and they're actually very soft and comfortable. They're a little bit on the firm side, but it's nice and supportive in its firmness. And these seats are actually certified by a company called AGR, which is a German company that apparently evaluates not only car seats but also furniture for your home and stuff. And these seats were, I guess, approved as being very comfortable for people who especially have sensitive backs and, you know, need good support. And they are fantastic seats. So in addition to just the shape of them being very good, you also have adjustable bolstering, which I love whenever seats have adjustable bolstering. And so this one, you can get it as snug as you want or as loose as you want, so it fits basically all body types. And especially for a smaller guy like me, I really appreciate how much it hugs. And it even has a massage function, which is also very interesting. Now, the massage, I'm not a huge fan of. In other GM vehicles that are more advanced, like the Cadillac CT6, it's very impressive. This one is just one mode. And I found it to be over aggressive. And at one point, it was pushing so hard on my upper back, I was actually like hunched over towards the steering wheel. It was like a little too much. So that could use a little bit of fine tuning, but otherwise, it's awesome that it offers that. And you know, again, just the adjustable bolstering is fantastic. They're also heated and ventilated seats. Next, though, is the steering wheel here, which is also heated and is just a fantastic wheel. It has a flat bottom, a little bit thicker, but not overkill. I think it's actually a little thinner than the previous Regal GS, which I appreciate. That one was really thick and beefy. This is a little less so, but I think you get a better grip with this wheel than you do with the previous generation. Has really nice 9-3 grips, nice little 10-2 notches, and, you know, just a few plastic buttons here on it. Nothing overly impressive or too luxurious, but just for a sporty wheel, it just feels great. Next are the gauges here in the Regal GS, which are very cool. Similar to other GM vehicles, they're almost identical to the gauges in the Blazer RS that I just reviewed. But, you know, Buick does have a little bit of a unique take on it with some different needles and a slightly different font. And so it gives it a little bit of a classier look. But in the middle there, you still have the same large, you know, screen that is very cool. And I really like the additional little gauges you have there built into the rings, which is always a nice touch. But anyway, that main display there, so, you know, it has all your basic stuff, trip information, all that kind of stuff, digital speed readout, of course. But then you can go over and it'll show you your media, your navigation instructions, a few other things like that as well. And so it doesn't have a ton of performance information or anything like that, like you get with maybe some FCA vehicles or things like that, but still a really nice set of gauges here. I do wish they were a little sportier looking though here for the GS. Otherwise, you know, they're basically identical to the gauges you get in any other Regal. Even whenever you are you're in the GS or Sport modes, they don't change appearance whatsoever. They don't even tell you it's in GS mode on the gauge cluster there. So just a copy and paste gauge thing. I think I wish that was a little sportier looking, but overall still good gauges. You also do have a heads-up display here, which is a nice thing to have, and it does give you a few different things. It'll also display your media or navigation instructions, but it also can show you a bar style tachometer as well there, which is cool to have. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, right up top, you have the 8-inch Chevrolet MyLink system, and this is the latest version of it. So the menus and stuff are a little more simplified than they were in the past, and it's just a very quick reacting, very easy to use, very straightforward system. You can swipe over and you'll see kind of a consolidation of the maps and also your phone and audio, but then you can also swipe to the main screen there, and it has all the basics that you need there. Not a ton of features, but all the stuff that everyone uses every day, and it does all those things very well. It has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Maps are very easy to just type in with the keyboard there since it's touchscreen, and very quickly pull up an address to navigate to, something like that if you don't want to plug in your phone for CarPlay or Android Auto. But audio is pretty easy to get through. You do have the on-screen buttons there to tune, even though you don't have a normal tune knob, but you do have a nice big volume knob, and so good to have all that. And so overall, no complaints, just a really good and easy to use infotainment system. Coming down, like I said, you have that nice big volume knob, which is kind of rubbery. It would be nice to have a little bit more metal accents. This whole interior is a little cheaper than I would personally like to see in a vehicle that retails for $43,000 like this one does. And so again, this is all basically copy stuff from a normal Regal, which is in the mid-20s, except of course the sportier stuff like the seats and the steering wheel. But you do have this climate control down here, which works well enough, and just a few basic buttons. And again, everything's very simplified. There aren't a million buttons, and I do really appreciate the design of it. Again, it just doesn't feel super luxurious. Like, you have hard plastic here by the transmission tunnel, and even some lower manufacturers like Mazda now have padding down here on competing vehicles like the Mazda 6. And so it would be nice to have some of that kind of stuff just to kind of make it feel a little more expensive in here and worthy of the price tag. Anyway, other things, moving on to storage here. So right in the middle, you'll see this 2 cup holder setup, which is nicely rubberized and a good position for those. And you also have in front of that a little slot that is supposed to charge the key. I guess the key's rechargeable, and so you can leave the key there when you're driving to make sure your key battery is always topped off. You'll also see a little power outlet there as well, but that's it. There isn't any other open storage there, unfortunately. You do have this other like extra cup holder type thing here. Now, it would be able to fit larger drinks, but for smaller drinks, it's a little bit too big. So not a real actual cup holder, and it's not designed as well as the ones up front here. But an extra nice little bin to put your phone or something like that, I suppose. You have the center armrest, which is a little bit padded here. It feels decently nice. And you open that up, and then you'll see an interesting combo. So you don't have much space in here, as you can see. And half of that space here is taken up by this wireless charging like pocket. And I've seen this in a couple other vehicles. It doesn't seem to ever work well. I've put my phone in there. I have an iPhone 10, and it's rubberized, so it really is, you got to shove it down in there hard, and then it doesn't even seem to charge it very well. I haven't even been able to see, because you can't even see the phone when it's in there, honestly, as to whether or not it's even charging. And if you had any kind of phone larger than an iPhone 10, it would not fit in there. So these larger smartphones you're seeing these days wouldn't even fit in there. Not a great solution. I would prefer just some type of flat thing, like a wireless charging pad, like everyone else does. You also have 2 USB jacks, an auxiliary jack, and an SD card slot in there, which is nice to see. But yeah, not much space in there. And the only other storage space you have here is in the doors. You have a pocket with a bottle holder, which is nice to have. And they are nice large pockets, but just not a whole lot of places to put things in here. Just a little underwhelmed compared to some of the competitors in this segment. And so, not bad, but not great either. Backseat space in the Regal GS here is pretty good with a sportback shape. You have a nice spacious back seats still. They're pretty soft, comfortable back seats. And anyway, whenever you sit there, I'm 5'9", and me sitting behind myself, I have about 4 to 5 inches of legroom to spare. So pretty nice and spacious as far as legroom goes. Headroom's also pretty good, even though you have a little bit of a slope there. I still have several inches of headroom to spare. So I think, even people over 6 feet tall should be able to fit back there pretty comfortably. You'll also see a fold down center armrest with 2 cup holders built into it, and it's a nice soft armrest. Looking forward, you'll see dedicated air vents, as well as 2 USB jacks. And then there's little pockets in each of the doors back there as well. And so overall, compared to the other competitors in this class, it is a very nice back seat, I think. Cargo space in the back of the Regal GS here is very good, again, because of that hatch design. I love that hatch thing. And, there's only a few other vehicles in the segment that really offer, a car look with the hatch versatility. You have the Kia Stinger, the Audi A5 Sportback, BMW 440 Grand Touring, and that's basically it. And so, between those few competitors, this is actually a lot of storage space. So Buick claims it's 32 cubic feet back there, and to me, it looks very similar to the space you get in the Kia Stinger, but Kia only claims 23.3 cubic feet. So not sure if there's any discrepancies there, but a very similar amount of space, but it is massive back there. It actually, according to Buick's measurements, is only a couple cubic feet less than the Tour X wagon version. So, that's how much space you're talking about back there. You can also fold down this rear seat, so, you can have nearly pickup-like versatility with a very long loading space there if you'd like. And so overall, just a fantastic trunk area there. All right, so I'm going for a drive. The Buick Regal here has a unique key for Buick, different than what you see on some other GM vehicles. And it's a nice key, though. Has, just a few buttons on it. It's all plastic, nothing too luxurious or anything. But, I like that it's pretty small. That's also something that's getting more and more rare these days. So I really like the key. But, of course, it's keyless access, keyless entry, and push-button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off in the Buick Regal GS. So the first thing you notice, I think the first thing I'm noticing is just how smooth the ride is here. It is really more impressive than I was expecting. Usually, like again, the previous Regal GS had those 20-inch wheels on rubber band tires, and so it was a lot of a more communicative and firmer ride that just was a little less comfortable. This is so comfortable. Whenever you're in the normal modes here, it just feels like you're in a normal Regal, actually. And so it has these continuously damping variable shocks, and so those can, get really stiff if you want in those sport modes, or they can be nice and relaxed here like it is now. And it is just such a nice cruiser. And that combined with, you have this 9-speed automatic that always seems to be in the right gear, so there isn't any kind of hunting around, and it's a pretty quiet experience too. You don't really hear too much wind noise or road noise, at low speeds at least. Visibility is pretty good here in the Regal as well. You have a pretty good view forward, but you do have this pretty thick A-pillar with the mirror attached and this speaker and everything, so that's very chunky down there at the bottom. That's the only thing that's not ideal. Otherwise, you have a view out of the back that's a little less than a normal sedan like you get with most of these hatchbacks. The Stinger is pretty similar, but it's not horrible. It's actually, I think, better than you would expect, but it still isn't great. But I'm going to go ahead and put it into the GS mode, and let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. And here we go. Okay, I think it started me in second there. But then it takes off. Wow. So this Regal GS has a good sound of that engine too. But yeah, so it it does a pretty good job getting up and going. So we have a 3.6 liter V6 engine that does 310 horsepower in this application, 282 pound-feet of torque, and 0 to 60 times aren't officially quoted, but I've seen times in the high 5-second range. So I'd say just under 6 seconds is what you can expect here for a 0 to 60. And like I said, it runs all that through a 9-speed automatic transmission, but unfortunately we don't have any kind of paddle shifters here, which is an odd exclusion. Usually sporty vehicles like this get them, and there's a lot of non-sporty vehicles that even have paddle shifters, but not present here. But you do have the slapstick if you want to manually shift it yourself. But it's your average automatic as far as laziness between shifts. So honestly, you're better off just leaving it in drive and hoping it figures itself out. It usually does, like starting in second and stuff isn't quite as much fun. But really, with the slower manual shifts, it's your only option, honestly, unless you really just want to do a manual shift for some reason. You're better off just leaving it in auto. Other things to note here about the Regal GS, you have a very responsive throttle that feels really, really good. And even again, when you're just trying to cruise around, it's very easy to be accurate and precise with your throttle inputs, which I'm really enjoying. Brakes also have a very natural feel, but they are a little bit grabby, a little quicker than you would expect, because we have 4-piston Brembo brakes up front there, and so those make it so that it really gives you a nice hard clamp down very quickly, and feels really good though. All the driver stuff in here seems to be really nicely dialed in. But we're coming up some corners here, and let's see how the Regal GS handles them. Okay, wow, it's flatter and really, wow, I'm impressed how it just dives right in, and it's just doing it like it's nothing. Wow, this is, I am shocked at just how good this is handling this. Good. Okay, so there's a little bit of understeer. I can see that, I can kind of feel the tires giving up a tiny bit. We're running some Continental all-season tires, 245 wide all around on these 19-inch wheels. And, you know, so that's the only limiting factor. Otherwise, it's amazing how this thing just goes around corners. It's like magic. It's like it's not even trying to work hard. It's not like other vehicles where you have tons of grip and you can feel the grip working. This, it doesn't even seem to need a lot of grip. Again, it does default to some mild understeer there whenever you're really pushing it. So I think if you had a tire upgrade on this, put some Michelin Pilot Sport 4s or something on here, you would have so much more grip, and then this thing would feel pretty much limitless, I think. And so there's a lot of stuff going on. So like I said, you have these continuously variable dampers, and those can change different, there's different modes to them. So I'm in GS mode, which is like a Sport Plus mode. There's also a normal Sport mode as well, which is a little less aggressive if you want. Now that only seems to affect the suspension. I haven't noticed the transmission being any more aggressive at all. You do have heavier steering with that. That's the other thing that comes along with those different modes, and that's about it. But I don't mind that. I think it actually works pretty well so far here. Unfortunately, we're behind some traffic now, so we have to kind of chill out a little bit. But I'm really impressed. So a few other things that I think help with the good handling of the Regal here is that we have a curb weight of only about 3,800 pounds, which again, for a vehicle this large, to have the luxuries it does, to have the hatchback versatility, 3,800 pounds isn't bad. That's lighter than what you give it like a Kia Stinger or something like that, and that certainly helps as well. Another thing that helps is you also do have a torque vectoring all-wheel drive system as standard here in the Regal GS, and that actually is a almost identical unit to what is running in the Focus RS from Ford. And so everyone loves the Focus RS and thinks it's a super good handler and stuff. Now, this doesn't have any kind of drift mode or anything like that does, but you're talking about the same type of an all-wheel drive system, torque vectoring all-wheel drive. And so that means you have very, very good bones, and it just makes for a very good platform that just really makes the Regal GS's handle so much better than you would expect. Again, I know it's a Buick, and so people have preconceived ideas and stuff, and even compared to the previous gen Regal GS, you know, that handled well, but it was, I think, more mechanical factors than it is now. This has a little bit more wizardry going on, I think, that really is impressing me. And another acceleration here. Yeah, it's a strong engine. Don't really have any kind of torque steer or anything either. It does a really good job of distributing the power. But yeah, the steering is just really nice and accurate, as well as having a nice heft. And so even in the GS mode here, it isn't overly heavy. It's not overkill. It's just enough to feel sportier. And you know, although these roads aren't in horrible condition or anything, I'm also noticing that even though the dampers might be a little bit stiffer and flatter here in the GS mode, I could totally daily drive this in GS mode, and it's very comfortable still. I think I do feel a little bit more of you know, what's going on the road, and a little bit of a, you know, I can feel the cracks and stuff in the grooves a little bit better, but it's not, again, not uncomfortable by any means. It has, I guess, it feels like it doesn't have quite as low of a center of gravity as maybe like the Audi S5 Sportback. That might have felt a little bit more planted to the ground, I guess, if that makes sense, and that's probably partially due to better tires. But this is, man, it turns in so well. And this 9-speed's doing a really good job of, you know, staying in tune with me as well for the most part. It's just, yeah, I can tear up this back road and it is doing it. I mean, it is, you know, you still have a little bit more weight and a little less confidence than you have with some of the absolute top dogs in this segment. So you know, have stuff like the Alfa Romeo Giulia, still handles better, a little bit lighter, quicker steering and stuff. So this isn't king of the, you know, hot sedan class or anything, but it is really, really impressive. It actually gives the Kia Stinger a run for its money, and I wasn't expecting it to be that good, but that's how good this is. I am really, really pleasantly surprised. Wow, so yeah, definitely worth checking out. But anyway, thanks to Buick, I'm gonna have this vehicle for an entire week, so I'm gonna drive around all week, and I'll come back and give you guys my extra thoughts on, you know, what it's like to live with one of these, as well as my real world fuel economy and my thoughts on the pricing. Alright, so I've been driving the Regal GS here for a week, and I've put 150 miles on it in my time of driving it here, and I just still really enjoy it. It handles so well, and it's just so organic in the way that it goes around corners. It just feels really, really good, and I think it's that torque factor and all-wheel drive really makes a difference, and that's what really sets this apart from a lot of its competitors as well. So, you have stuff like the Nissan Maxima, which is very similarly priced for its top, sportier trims, but with those, you only get front-wheel drive, and so with the Regal here, you can get all-wheel drive, and so there's only a few that really offer that. You have like the Alfa Romeo Giulia, which I'd say has about the same amount of luxury inside here, and you can also go with all-wheel drive, but then you lose out on the sportback functionality. Really, the main three competitors here are the Kia Stinger, the Audi A5 Sportback, and then the BMW 4 Series Grand Coupe, the hatch version of that. And so those are really the only three, and I mean, when you start talking about the Germans, you're talking about stuff that's way more expensive with way less power. For the base A5 Sportback and the 4 Series, especially if you go for like the 430i's, then you're only getting, like 250 odd horsepower from a turbo 4-cylinder, and that's it, versus this having the V6 with 310 horsepower, way punchier, although you might have similar low-end torque because, those have the turbo, but still, you have more top-end punch, and this engine also sounds way better than those turbo 4-cylinders. It's just got a really nice sound. It's almost like a VQ, almost like a Nissan V6 type of sound to it. To me, I really enjoy the way this motor sounds, and it's got a nice volume to it too, even inside the cabin here. It's a little more than you might expect from a Buick, honestly, but it's not overwhelming or anything, but just has a really good sound to it. But the Germans, like I said, are way more expensive. If you want similar power, you're looking at the S5 and the 440i, which again, you're then like 10, 20 grand over what this is. So those really don't seem comparable to me either. But you have the Stinger, which is, I think, the main competitor here to the Regal GS. So yes, the Buick badge is a little bit more luxurious, I guess, than Kia, but I will say the Kia Stinger interior, even in its base form, is nicer than this is. There's metal buttons and nicer trim, nicer feeling materials. Everything in the Stinger feels nicer, and so if you can obviously look beyond a badge, then the Kia is the phenomenal value choice. But it also isn't a direct competitor because, with the Stinger, you have either just the base model, which is another 250 horsepower turbo 4-cylinder, but at least you have the Sportback there, and those also would undercut this pricing-wise with those being in the mid-30,000 range. But then, you have the Stinger GT, which is also a V6, but it's a twin turbo V6, which has almost an extra 100 pound-feet of torque, an extra 55 horsepower, so way punchier and way quicker feeling than this, honestly. Going full throttle on a Stinger GT, you got a lot more thrust than you do in this, which just has a more of a natural power band, and it's a little weaker feeling. And so, I would kind of view the Regal GS here as almost like a mid-grade Stinger in some ways, where it's not quite as fast as the Stinger GT, but not quite as slow as the base Stinger, and, that's kind of how I view this. And pricing-wise, it falls in line with that, too, because these Regal GSs start, including destination, around $40,000. This one has tested as $43,115, and so, you could get a base Stinger GT for that money, but then you wouldn't get the premium audio like this has the Bose stereo. You wouldn't get the larger infotainment display here in the middle of the gauges, all that type of stuff that you don't get. And so, whenever you compare this to a comparable Stinger GT, like, one that has the adaptable bolstering like this does, with the adjustable bolstering, you can't get massage in the Stinger, but the heated ventilated seats, heated steering wheel, all those types of features, the Bose stereo and everything, all that kind of stuff, you get that in a Stinger GT with the adaptive cruise and everything. Those are like 52 for the MSRP with all-wheel drive. So, at that point, you're a good, $9,000 or so above the Regal GS. If you go for the Stinger GT1, you can do without a few features, then you get, a little bit closer to the pricing of the Regal, but it's really tough to beat the Regal pricing because, like the Kia, the Regal, you probably aren't going to be paying MSRP for either. Buick often runs very large incentives. Kia also does as well, and so realistically, both of these cars, you can get for several thousand off usually, and so that, again, it makes it tough to do a direct comparison, but that is really the closest competitor. But it is close enough price-wise that although I love the Regal GS, I would spend a few grand more to get a Stinger GT personally. You have the nicer interior with, you know, more metal and just a nicer, higher quality feeling interior, in my opinion. You still have very comfortable seats. You still have all the same great tech. You know, it's very comparable, and you get way more thrust of that twin turbo V6. You also get a much longer warranty, a 10-year warranty versus, you know, like the 5 or so you have here with the Buicks. And so, you know, those types of things would sway me towards the Kia personally. I will say though, the fuel economy here was pretty impressive in the Regal GS in my week of having it. So these are rated at 19 in the city, 27 on the highway for a combined average of 22. Now my driving was primarily city driving, just a little bit of highway mixed in, and I still ended up getting 20.3 mpg. So actually, you know, one better than the city rating I was expecting to get, honestly. And you know, still, you know, a little bit under the combined 22 number, but still, compared to other vehicles that usually get a couple under the city number in my testing, to be one over the city is impressive in my thoughts, especially this being a non-turbo V6 engine, you know, a luxury vehicle. I think that's pretty good fuel economy personally for the performance you get. One thing that this vehicle has is the auto stop start though, and that's something that I wish was able to be disabled. Unfortunately, Buick doesn't have any buttons to turn it off, much like the Chevys. Only Cadillac, I think, allows you to turn it off, and even that is, I think, limited to certain models. And that is something the Kia Stinger, although it has an auto stop start function as well, you can turn it off in the Stinger. It has a button to turn it off, and so especially for those who kind of find that a deal breaker, which I'm starting to find is a decent amount of people, that is another advantage of the Stinger, to have that being able to be defeated. And so, yeah, the Regal GS is very compelling, and I think the other thing that I've noticed as well is the Regals don't seem to hold their value as well as Stingers are currently. And so, for example, I mean, you can get like the previous gen Regal GS, which I reviewed, you know, several years ago now. You can get one of those now for like high teens, low $20,000 range, which is impressive. And even these, you know, since it's a 2019 model year Regal GS, the 2018s, the same thing, have been out for a year now. And some of those are starting to show up on the used market, and those are going down into, again, the high 20s already, or very, very low 30s, and that's lower than what you can get a Stinger GT for currently. So if you're looking on the used market, the Buick definitely has the advantage there for sure, and that would make this a little more compelling, I think, than buying one new. But again, with the manufacturer incentives and stuff, you could probably get one of these, you know, a little bit more affordable than the MSRP. But yeah, so overall, it is still a very good car. I love it. Even though I'd probably take a Stinger GT over it, I still do love it, and this is far better than I was expecting it to be, and it still is pretty high up on my list. If, you know, there wasn't a Stinger, or there was something preventing me from getting one, if I wanted a really fun four-door sedan, this is really tough to beat value-wise. Having the hatch practicality is fantastic. It's also a beautiful looking car. I love just looking at this thing. It's great, especially the front. The back isn't quite as amazing, but the front especially just really is a looker, and that certainly sweetens the deal as well. So yeah, anyway, let me know your thoughts here on the Regal GS in the comments below. Huge thanks to Buick for providing me with this Regal to review for you guys today. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.